On a cold February day in 1957, a young boy's body was discovered inside a cardboard box in a quiet wooded area of Philadelphia. He was bruised, malnourished, and alone. For more than 6 decades, no one knew his name. He was simply called the boy in the box. But after 65 years of mystery, science, and persistence finally gave this child back his identity. His name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli, and this is his story. February 25th, 1957. In the Fox Chase neighborhood of Philadelphia, a young man checking his muskrat traps noticed a cardboard box lying in the brush. At first, he ignored it. Trash dumped in the woods was common. But the next day, curiosity won. He approached the box and lifted its lid. Inside was the naked body of a little boy wrapped in a plaid blanket. His hair had been crudely cut. His small frame was covered in bruises. He was estimated to be between 4 and 6 years old, weighing barely 30 pounds. The box was traced to a J.C. Penney bassinet, a common baby item sold nationwide. The case stunned the city. Flyers with the boy's face blanketed telephone poles, gas stations, and diners. The police circulated 400,000 posters and even placed his image on electric bills sent across Philadelphia. But no one came forward to claim him. He became known as America's unknown child. Detectives worked day and night chasing every lead imaginable. They compared his fingerprints and footprints to hospital records. They checked missing child reports from across the country. They even examined the possibility that he'd been kidnapped or smuggled from overseas. One lead suggested he might be a Hungarian refugee, another that he'd been abducted from a Long Island supermarket. Neither proved true. Investigators questioned a family running a foster home nearby, and even 2 carnival workers traveling through the area. All ruled out. Then came the most disturbing claim. A woman from Ohio told authorities that her mother had bought a boy from his birth parents in the 1950s, kept him locked in a basement, and killed him in a fit of rage. She knew intimate details that matched the case, but investigators could never corroborate her story. Decade after decade, the file thickened with theories, none confirmed. The boy's identity, his name, his family, his story remained a void. The detectives who first worked the case grew old, some retired, others passed away, yet the boy in the box haunted them all. He was buried at Ivy Hill Cemetery beneath a small stone that read only, "America's Unknown Child." Every year, someone left flowers. No one ever claimed responsibility. For generations of Philadelphians, the image of that young face, eyes closed, bruised, nameless, became part of the city's collective memory. In 1998, police exhumed the boy's body in hopes of extracting DNA, but technology then was primitive and the results were inconclusive. 2 decades later, in 2019, investigators tried again. This time, with advanced forensic genealogy, the impossible became possible. Tiny fragments of degraded DNA were analyzed, compared, and cross-matched to public genealogy databases. Bit by bit, the web of relatives narrowed. By 2022, the name finally emerged. Joseph Augustus Zarelli, born January 13, 1953. After 65 years, America's unknown child finally had an identity. At a packed news conference in December 2022, Philadelphia Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw stood before a projected photo of a little boy in black and white. "When people think about the boy in the box," she said, "a profound sadness is felt, not just because a child was murdered, but because his identity and his rightful claim to existence were taken away." Detectives revealed that Joseph's parents were deceased, but that he still had living siblings. He had lived in West Philadelphia, near 61st and Market Streets. Authorities wouldn't release his parents' names out of respect for surviving relatives, nor speculate publicly on who might have been responsible for his death. "It's going to be an uphill battle to determine who caused this child's death," said Captain Jason Smith. "We may never know, but we're going to do everything possible to try." On that cold February day in 1957, Joseph's body was found wrapped in a blanket and placed in a JCPenney box meant for a baby bassinet. He'd been beaten. He was malnourished, weighing just 30 pounds. His hair appeared freshly and unevenly cut, as though by someone unskilled. Perhaps to disguise him. Police believe he had suffered for some time before dying. Yet there were also signs of care. He had been gently wrapped in a blanket. The act felt both brutal and remorseful, as if his killer wanted to hide the evidence but couldn't entirely erase the guilt. The box had originally contained a baby crib sold at a local store, but tracing its buyer was impossible. Thousands had been sold. Over the decades, hundreds of detectives, forensic experts, and volunteers chased the truth. Among them was the Vidocq Society, a group of retired law enforcement officers and forensic specialists dedicated to solving cold cold cases. They spent years analyzing old evidence, raising funds for DNA testing, and keeping Joseph's memory alive. When the identity was finally confirmed, one of their founders said, "Many of the men and women who worked this case aren't with us anymore, but I feel their souls standing here with us today." For those investigators, Joseph's name wasn't just a breakthrough, it was redemption for a city that had never stopped wondering who he was. Even with his identity restored, the question remains, who killed him? Detectives now know the family he was born into, but many of the people who might have known the truth are gone. Some suspicions exist, perhaps a family member, perhaps neglect or abuse, but nothing has been proven. The police believe someone out there, now elderly, still remembers Joseph. Maybe a neighbor who noticed bruises, or a relative who heard a rumor but kept silent for decades. Authorities hope that publicly revealing his name will trigger memories and bring an avalanche of new tips. Joseph's identification marks a milestone in forensic science. The same techniques that unmasked his identity are now being used to solve hundreds of other cold cases. For the scientists involved, his DNA was almost too degraded to analyze. Like confetti, one forensic genealogist said. It took more than 2.5 years to reconstruct enough genetic material to trace his lineage. But once the puzzle came together, every clue pointed to Joseph Zarelli. There was no doubt. The grave that once read America's Unknown Child will soon bear his true name. For those who spent their lives chasing the truth, it's not just closure, it's a promise fulfilled. When you speak a name out loud, one investigator said, that person lives again in spirit. Joseph Augustus Zarelli is no longer the boy in the box. He's a child who once lived, laughed, and mattered. The case is still active. Detectives continue to search for who took Joseph's life and why. A reward remains on offer for information leading to an arrest. Some believe justice may never come. Too many years have passed. But for others, this new chapter means hope. Each DNA discovery proves that time doesn't erase truth. It only delays it. In 1957, Philadelphia buried a nameless child and called him America's Unknown. In 2022, the world finally learned his name, Joseph Augustus Zarelli. He was 4 years old. He was loved by someone, somewhere. And though we still don't know who took his life, we now know who he was. Sometimes justice comes not in a courtroom, but in a name spoken aloud, a name that turns a cold case back into a human story. Rest in peace, Joseph. You are unknown no longer.